I merely asked whether you had known much of Miss Fairfax.
I only know what is generally known. That she is poor and of no consequence.
Husbands bring happy news. Such happy news. We've had a letter this very morning from my niece, Jane Fairfax.
I hope that she is well.
In normal course.
All her life, Emma has been compared to Jane Fairfax.
You make it very plain you do not like Miss Fairfax.
Everybody supposes we must be so fond of each other because we are the same age. Ever since I can remember, I have been told I could find no better companion than Jane Fairfax. She was so accomplished and so superior.
Emma doesn't like Jane because she's a threat to Emma and a rival.
Oh, to think that poor Jane may have perished.
All of this is underlined through their clothing. Emma seems to dress in a really unique way, and whenever we see Jane, she seems to dress similarly as Emma, or she wears something that Emma had previously been wearing. One example is the Spencer ensemble. She wears a lilac Spencer and a white dress. Later on we see Jane wearing this one. We see Emma wearing a white dress and coral earrings at the night of the play. We see Jane wearing a similar thing. This painting may or may not have been a reference, since the painted girl is also a music player. Jane wears the same dress again, but it's at two different occasions, which kinda indicates that she does not have the money, but then so does Miss Western. Her dress still does look like this dress in style, here worn by Jane and Emma are basically opposites in this scene, like Emma is wearing something black and Jane is wearing something white. And then in the end, it's also from a deleted scene, it's the exact opposite. Jane is wearing black and Emma is wearing white, which we will briefly see at Emma's wedding. When they visit Mr. Knightley, especially in this scene, it really looks like they're copy-paste of each other. Emma seems to be shocked that Miss Taylor seems to have done a match between Mr. Knightley and Jane Fairfax.
I have made a match between Mr. Knightley and Jane Fairfax.
Mr. Knightley and Jane Fairfax.
Tonight, he sent his carriage for her as a courtesy and walked himself. Was that not gallant?
A bit strange to assume they're a match, just based on the fact that Mr. Knightley sent his carriage for Jane.
Why do you keep a carriage if you never put it out?
It's just such a shame to see it standing by. A gentleman on foot, it's
Unusual.
unusual.
Mr. Knightley's just very
Fond of walking.
But then I was like, why should she be surprised about this? Because she should know that Mr. Knightley loves to walk. So he just sends the carriage for Jane so that he has an excuse to walk properly, and also that she has a carriage because she's poor. But then I found again this caricature from the 1910-15s where it says harmony before marriage. So, and if this was known at the time that people would play music together if they were into each other, it makes way more sense why Emma is so shocked, because also the way Jane looks at Mr. Knightley and them playing together, like if this was a known fact that this indicates interest into another person, makes sense why Emma was jealous and reacted the way she did. There's not a lot to say about Frank Churchill other than
Frank is a young man who's got this outlook, and this was the key for me, the outlook that everything is going to be all right. Maybe even better than all right. Everything is going to be great. So if his philosophy every single day when he wakes up is everything's going to be great, everything is going to be great for him.
I find it funny from time to time, especially the hairdressing scene.
He's in Highbury only 2 weeks.
And yet he spent a whole day going to London just to get his hair cut. 16 miles, twice over. He's a trifling, silly fop.
Found this one here, I think it's from Tumblr. Yeah, and it goes, Now we know that he actually went to London so he could send a piano.
He sent the pianoforte.
He has confessed.
Also, the piano. Frank is really protective as to why he had never sent one before. I am no bad lover, she's just never stayed long enough before.
Rather wonder it was never made before.
Perhaps Miss Fairfax has never been staying here so long before.
And it really should have been clear as day. If not that, then the way he pays attention to her complexion, throwing in an insult right after, just so he doesn't make it too obvious that he likes her.
And her beauty.
Miss Fairfax is naturally so pale as almost always to give the appearance of ill health.
At least you admire her apart from her complexion.
I cannot separate Miss Fairfax and her complexion.
That Jane is air, like, I don't know, but for me, only someone who's like really in love with someone would say,
Ah, good heavens.
pay attention where someone is.
There she is now.
He does it and he gives it away so many times, like also when he talks about her hair.
She has done her hair in so odd a way I never saw anything like it.
Like, no other man paid as much attention as Frank did. And then Miss Bates is also like,
How do you like Jane's hair? She did it all herself. Too wonderful. No hairdresser from London, I think, could do a finer style.
maybe Jane's dress is based on this template. I saved it because of the chain she wears to prove that wearing a cross, as Emma does, is common for the time. I realized that Jane and Cassandra Austen had crosses like hers, and so it was probably more so a hint towards Jane Austen. Then I saw it was a ball dress template. This is an interesting scene because at the beginning we see how Mrs. Bates tells Emma this exact information, and she's so annoyed and she doesn't want to hear about it.
Yes, they were out in a party on the water. And Jane, by the sudden whirling around of something or other in the sails, would have been dashed to the sea at once. And actually, all but gone. But Mr. Dixon, with the greatest presence of mind, caught hold of her habit and saved her life.
Heaven forbid that I should ever bore anybody half as much about all the Knightleys together as Miss Bates does about Jane Fairfax. One is sick of the very name, Jane Fairfax. Every letter from her is read 40 times over, and if she does but knit a pair of garters, one hears of nothing else for a whole month.
But then she still got the information, and now she's telling it to Frank, whom she wants to impress.
To Mr. Dixon.
Mr. Dixon.
He saved her life. Did you hear of it? A water party, and by some accident she was falling overboard. He caught her.
Huh.
And she plays it as if it's such a grand thing, something to be interested in and the latest gossip. But when it was told to her the first time, she was just so disinterested and annoyed at it. So I like how it shows her two sides. I was already talking about this theory that Emma is showing that she belongs to Mr. Knightley through her yellow coat. Now, Churchill is also wearing a yellow coat, but not as vibrant as Mr. Knightley's, and on the one hand it could indicate that he could be a possible love interest to Emma, but at the same time, since Emma and Jane dress so similarly, it also indicates that he's a love interest to Jane. And vice versa, of course. Speaking of love interests, Mr. Knightley. We've already said a lot about him in this video, so I wanted to make it brief and talk about 3 things. First off, the opening scene where we see Mr. Knightley being dressed. This is an important scene because the director wanted to show how men got dressed and to reverse the stereotype. Because in most films you would see women getting dressed and kind of seen from a male gaze. So for this reason I think it's an important scene just because we see it in a different way, and also men needed to get dressed just as intensely as women at the time, like they needed someone to dress them. And the second point is that he's just so nice. Like, I like that he asks Harriet to dance.
Will you dance, Miss Smith?
He never dances. I can see why.
I assume he does it for Emma, but also for Harriet. It's just so adorable. I like his thoughts on women, and you think that this was written more than 200 years ago.
He's kind of an ideal man at this point in history. I'm not sure there were many men like him, and in a way, the privilege in playing him is you're playing a woman's perspective of an ideal man. In a way, there are a few of these moral men in Austen, and he's one of them. And
They're the only two characters that actually match each other intellectually.
She's pretty and she's good-tempered, and that is all.
That is all. These are not trivial recommendations, Mr. Knightley. Till men do fall in love with well-informed minds instead of handsome faces, a girl with such loveliness as Harriet has a certainty of being admired and sought after wherever she goes. I am very much mistaken if your sex in general would not find these qualities the highest claims a woman could possess.
Upon my word, Emma, to hear you abusing the reason you have is almost enough to make me think so too.
So he does not think that beauty is the most important thing.
Men of sense do not want silly wives.
Also, it makes it so much funnier that Johnny is a little Emma.
I've done it a bit. Yeah, it's very rewarding when it goes right, and then awful when it goes wrong. But
Emma and Knightley wear a similar ring from the beginning on. It seems to be the same stone.